Welcome to another edition of Doctor and the Dude. I am Dr. Jim Siebert, a meteorologist, and my compadre, my friend, my man crush, Josh Morgan is here. Josh, how are you doing today?
Real good, real good. I'm on the road to Mississippi, my summer and fall headquarters because hurricane season.
I love it. Everybody else runs from hurricanes, and you move to them and go to them. That's one of my favorite things about you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I like being weird and I like being liked for being weird.
Hey, we're talking models today, aren't we?
We are. So I have a question for you, actually. Okay, so computer models, they used to be just for scientists. Now it seems like everyone you go on Twitter, every consumer is like looking at all the computer models, trying to get a leg up on what's going to happen. Dr. Jim, what's your favorite computer model? Do you have a favorite? And if so, why? And I mean specifically for tracking hurricanes.
That's like asking me which one of my children is my favorite child. I have four kids, and I'll be honest with you, my two daughters are the easiest, and my two sons are the funniest. So, it's making choices like that. Now, I say that because computer models are just as maybe temperamental. So I guess if I had to say I have a favorite, which I know that you're going to nail me down on this, most of the time the GFS would end up being my favorite, but I look at like 30 different models. Every single model has a bias or a set of circumstances that it's built around. And so that's what I'm looking at, is not just what the model is, but also what the model wants to tell us. And so every time we start with hurricane season, I'll watch, like for example, the European and the GFS are probably the two most popular models. The GFS, the problem with it is that early on in the season especially, it will overblow the storms and say it might be, it'll say it's going to be a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, and then 2 days later there's nothing, and there's no indication on the model at all. So that's kind of a problem, but as we move through the hurricane season, the models kind of lock into each other. And I think that overall, I'd have to say that the GFS tends to be my favorite model if I had to actually pick one.
Okay, I'm actually shocked because GFS is my favorite. I get a lot of heat for this because of the reason you mentioned, because it has a lot of what people call false positives. It forms hurricanes that don't actually form. But for me, that's okay. As someone who, my job, my work is to hunt hurricanes and typhoons around the world, and I need the advance notice. And I feel the GFS is the best at sniffing out stuff way before it happens. Now, again, a lot of false positives, but usually the first sign that there's going to be some intense cyclone in some corner of the earth, it's usually the GFS. And so it is my favorite. And I feel the Euro, these ECMWF, it seems to lately, last couple of years, seems to have like kind of lost its ability to sniff things before they form. They adjusted it or something. I imagine they'll adjust it again, but right now it doesn't seem so good for what's called cyclogenesis, or sort of showing when something is gonna form.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very accurate way of describing it. Now, the good thing is though, and with the GFS, and I know you do this too, is that we watch for the trend. And if we see over several runs of the models for several days that our confidence grows in what we're seeing. And I do think as we get later into the season, the GFS does tend to do better over time too. So I guess if we had to pick that, it would be the GFS. And it's funny that we agree on that.
Yeah, no, I'm actually kind of shocked.
Yeah, I guess, but not really when we're relying on the same things. So let's talk about history just a little bit now as we go into July. Now, I know that you're a history buff, so we've had some storms in July, but it's kind of interesting where they happen.
Yeah, I'm a total history nerd, confessed history nerd. So July hurricanes, basically it's the Gulf Coast or it's the Carolinas. Those are the two kind of hotspots as far as Americans are concerned, as far as what we have to worry about. That's where most of them are. Now, they're usually category ones and category twos because the waters still aren't that warm yet. But there are two known category threes, two known majors that hit the U.S. in July. One was in Texas, actually close to your neck of the woods, down in Freeport, Texas, in 1909, a long time ago. And actually, the other one was also long ago. That was 1916. Came ashore near the Alabama-Mississippi border, took sort of like a Hurricane Frederick-like track. Frederick was a storm that devastated that region in 1979. There was a major hurricane that took a track right near the Mississippi-Alabama border in 1916. Those are the two known July majors in the United States in the month of July. So Usually don't have to worry about too many intense ones, but we definitely got to start looking because we get a lot more hurricane landfalls in July than in June. Now, tell me why do you think that is, Dr. Jim,
Mm-hmm.
that the concentration is still mostly the Gulf or the Carolinas?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Gulf is shallower compared to the Atlantic, and therefore the water temperature tends to warm faster because it's shallow water. And then the Gulf Stream takes it right around and right off the Carolinas. So, which makes sense. If the water's warmer in the Gulf and the Gulf Stream is going along there, that's where you have the chance to see that. And also, it's interesting that in the end of May to the first week of June, sometimes we'll get those areas of low pressure. They may not become a tropical storm or a hurricane, but they can end up dumping 5, 10 inches of rain in Texas or in Louisiana. And then as we move into August, as the Atlantic starts to warm and the water starts to get deeper and warmer, then we start to see that shifting. And so it really makes sense when you talk about it historically.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So to combine, to sort of bring together our two topics today, computer models in July. So I'm looking at the GFS and all of them, trying to see if anything's going to be threatening the United States in July. Not seeing anything so far, like really, except maybe the Euro ensembles or something way down the Caribbean. But otherwise, it's looking pretty clean right now.
Yeah, and we hope it stays that way. Well, Josh, we are out of time. Thanks for joining us again. Safe travels as you get in place for the rest of the hurricane season. We hope you all have a safe hurricane season too.